Looks like a hungry crowd out there today. Good afternoon, and as you all know, we began the session with a fly around prior to beginning, and I thought it was appropriate for the Lieutenant Governor and Speaker to join me this afternoon after the conclusion of the session to give you all an opportunity to hear some comments and then ask some questions, which I'm sure you don't have any, but we'll open it up at that time. And we'll have Speaker start off, Lieutenant Governor, and I'll have some remarks, and then we'll do some Q&A. We're going to have some bill signings as well. So good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for asking me to be here with you today. It is a nice spring day in Georgia, and we have the Masters in town, so a lot of good things going on in the state. When they asked me to do a session report, one of the things that always hits me about this time is people come up to me and they go, well, did y'all do X? And I'll say, well, I don't know. The House did that. I don't know if the Senate took it up or not, because we all get caught up in our own worlds. And as you know, in the hectic hustle and bustle, the House does things, the Senate does things, and we agree and disagree back and forth. So it's sometimes difficult for me to give a complete report of exactly what we did or didn't do. So I'm going to limit my remarks to what the House did, because that's all I can say for certain. I know you're here on a certificate of need. I know that that is a major piece of legislation that we put together. And, you know, I hate to start bragging on people and calling names because I'll leave somebody out, but Sharon Cooper did a great job on that. And she worked really hard, and Mickey Chanel did too, and I'll start leaving people off. But we needed to bring certificate of need into the 21st century, and we have. Other things that came on as the House started, I had a little acronym. Everybody knows I'm kind of fond of those acronyms, and it's not for any reason other than I have trouble remembering what it is that we're doing. So I came up with this acronym, WET, water. The House and the Senate adopted a statewide water plan, and that's now been signed by the governor. And we also, both bodies adopted a reservoir plan and funding for reservoirs. So for all the people out there that think that drought is over, it's not. But we have a plan for future droughts, and we'll build reservoirs in this state. The education. The House adopted a very comprehensive charter school bill, and to give more, and for the first time, authority for an independent body to approve charter schools in this state. At the same time, we passed a bill we call the Bridge Bill. I'm concerned about high school graduation rates. They're somewhere in the 60s, 60% that is, which is another way of saying that 1 out of 3 high school students are not graduating, and that is not acceptable. We came up with an idea with Representative Fran Millar to let high school students work in conjunction with career and technical adult, and while they're in high school, study and gain a skill, and the House passed that Bridge Bill. On transportation, the House started off looking at a statewide plan and then went to a regional plan, and the House adopted a transportation plan for the state of Georgia to allow funding. And unfortunately, as you all know, there's been not such good news about transportation. And all I can say is that at this time we've got some more work to do. We're going to have to come back and do something else about transportation in this state. Trauma funding. We needed a trauma funding network. And the House passed a proposal to add $10 for every car in the state if we took the tag taxes off. Unfortunately, we didn't get that done, and we'll have some work to do on trauma funding when we come back. And as everybody knows, I did a little bit on taxes. The House adopted a comprehensive statewide reform and cut of property taxes and income taxes. In the time we studied property taxes rose in the state 20%, or $1.5 billion. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do anything about that again for about 2 years. But I'm committed to working with the governor and lieutenant governor and coming back again and again and again to try to give the homeowners and the property tax owners of this state relief from the most hated tax they have, property taxes and tag taxes. I look forward to working with them as we try to address these problems that the state faces and the people of our state face. We're a growing and prosperous state, and economic times are just a little bit down right now. But the way you take care of that is you keep handling the problems and keep telling the people that we're aware of their pain and that we're trying our best to give them relief. Thank you for coming out, and I look forward to answering your questions later.
Thank you, Speaker. Very pleased with many of the things that we were able to accomplish this session. Of course, education has always been a top priority of mine. Pleased that we're able to also have another $15 million for career academies that's going to continue that effort throughout the state. As you know, we're experiencing 98% graduation rate, 100% placement rate in these schools, and it's a great opportunity to continue the momentum that we have built from last year to move forward into this year, but also the expansion and more opportunities with charter schools as well. That bill moving forward, and I think will mean an awful lot to our children in this great state. Very pleased also from an economic development standpoint. Clearly the energy cap that's going to be moving forward is going to be very helpful to industries across the state, particularly in manufacturing. Also, the integrated theory that we passed through both bodies is another great tool to incentivize industries that are currently here in Georgia as we move forward. Also, very pleased with the freeze, the credit freeze, a very pro-consumer initiative with credit theft, as we all are aware, identity theft, the issue that's out there, and tightening that down to give consumers more opportunities, I think, would be very beneficial. Of course, the $60 million that is also in trauma this year is going to mean an awful lot to the existing trauma units that are here in our state. We came very, very close with a trauma network as well as a funding dedicated source that did not pass in the end, but we're very committed as we move forward to ensure that so many of our individuals, citizens in our state, that could potentially be in a traumatic circumstance would not have the care in which we would need. And it's a huge priority of mine personally, and I know it is of the governor as well. Very pleased with the water, as we talked about. Clearly, we have experienced a crisis in our state. We are rebounding, and I appreciate the governor and his steady leadership as he's negotiated through with the Corps of Engineers and others. $40 million for the reservoirs is going to mean an awful lot to get us moving in the right direction. And then, of course, the statewide water management plan to ensure that we're focused there. Georgia is a wonderful state, although we've had some very interesting challenges this year, particularly with the economy and the slowdown in revenue. We have met our obligation through the budget and with the steady leadership of the governor and many of the great leaders in the Senate. We're happy to be in the position that we are and look forward to continuing to identify challenges and finding real solutions to bring to bear. Governor.
Thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Speaker, and thank you for your assessment here. I'm happy to be with these gentlemen here today to really the essential function is to sign 3 bills into law that we want to talk about. You know, each of these bills represents years of research, analysis, many stakeholder meetings, and collaboration. And each puts forth a policy that's data-driven and it's principle-centered. And a few months ago, as you all know, these 2 gentlemen joined me as we traveled around the state laying out our common vision and shared priorities for the 2008 session. And we agreed on issues, top priority issues that matter to Georgia, as has been indicated: water, healthcare, transportation, education. And in the 12 weeks, weeks or years, since the session began, we saw bills introduced that, in my opinion, were not crafted as carefully as they could have been. There were major policy issues that were being tinkered with up to the very end. And while some are disappointed about those bills not making it successfully through, I think the best outcome happened for Georgia. Actually, a few of these were modified and amended without, I think, the appropriate attention to detail that I believe the people of Georgia deserve. But those, unfortunately, were some of the bulk of the issues that attracted the media attention, as you well know. But I don't think that should detract from the progress that Georgia has made in water and health care, transportation, and education in this legislative session. First of all, in February, I was very proud that the legislature worked together in a very concerted fashion to affirm and pass the water management plan statewide that had been worked on for a number of months with multiple stakeholders. I've never seen a process so involving people of interest and legislative leadership in this area, as well as those who were concerned about a very important outcome. It was a very inclusive process and stakeholder input at every step. As you know, the last 3 years, the Water Advisory Council Advisory Committee, they met 14 times, 230 people representing all sectors, and this council worked hard also, more than 30 town hall meetings across the state. Last July, plenty of time, the EPD released the first draft. Over the following months, the council worked tirelessly to continue to refine the plan. I was very proud of Dr. Carol Couch as she listened to much of the input, some of it regionally generated, some of it sector concern about various concerns, and I thought this was the essence of the way the political process ought to work. It went through 3 revisions before January and was introduced on the first day of the session. It passed very quickly with bipartisan support, and I was fortunate and honored to sign it on February the 6th. I do believe this is how public policy of this magnitude should be shaped with scrutiny, with transparency, and with collaboration. I appreciate the legislature's willingness to agree with my budget recommendations regarding the water issues, and all in all, in the 08 and 09 budget, $120 million adding reservoirs to upgrade our water infrastructure across the state. Today, in addition to the water management plan, I'm pleased to sign 3 more bills that I believe are some of our best work and in the best process of how these bills came about. Some of those positive outcomes of the 2008 legislative session. And I want you to pay attention to how far these go back. In 2005, I signed a bill creating the Commission of Need, Certificate of Need Commission, rather. And it released its report on CON in December 2006. And since then, I think a very intense, passionate, respectful, deliberative process has taken place. Input was solicited from virtually all stakeholders, and there's never any lack of stakeholders in the healthcare sector. They will come out. You don't have to find them. They'll find you. Doctors, hospital groups, the Department of Community Health, legislature, and in the end, Senator Balfour and Senator Williams and Representative Chanel and Cooper will tell you that not everybody got everything they wanted in that bill. But isn't that the way the process is supposed to work? Not every single detail, but that's the way I believe good legislation that the public can be proud of comes to bear. Today, when I sign this bill, I believe we'll have a strong piece of legislation that relaxes some outdated regulations, Mickey, that limit healthcare options for Georgia. The first Certificate of Need bill was passed in a different era, when you had just straight third-party payer systems that had no way to regulate or to put any market forces on that. That was a surrogate for competition. And today we have competitive delivery systems of health care that then manage themselves financially, and we ought to liberate them to do what's in the best interest of their patients and their customers. This bill lifts restrictions imposed by Georgia's CON program. It boosts the competition and quality in our healthcare marketplace, and I believe it also, Senator Williams, paves the way to bring Georgia a world-class cancer center, and thanks to your passionate effort in that as well. I'll also sign another piece of legislation that's been in the works for quite some time. In fact, some of you in the media have mocked the time that we took on this piece of legislation. It is the transformation in education from a compliance system to a performance-based system in education. And I don't want you to minimize that. It's easy to say, but I want you to think about what that means. Forever in Georgia, we've had a compliance-based system where in Atlanta we acted like we knew what was best for education all over the state in every school district. And we said, if you follow these rules, you'll get this much money. Now, we didn't check too much after what the performance was after that. They just got the money because they followed the rules. IE squared represents a huge transformation from a compliance-based system to a performance-based system, where individual systems will choose to enter into various levels of contract with the state, in essence the public, the citizens of Georgia, to say, if you give us this money and let us manage our business, we will get you this performance by contract, with accountability and with sanctions and consequences and real world type of consequences. That, I believe, is the essence of local control and also student achievement that we want to mix. It's a clear mission to raise student achievement and ensure access to excellent education for every Georgia student. This is refining and redefining the relationship between the state and local school systems, again allowing increased flexibility in exchange for greater accountability and exchanging compliance for commitment, contracted commitment to performance. I think that's a good deal. This bill marries the two most important things that I believe we want in education. That's local decision making, where communities are different, they're unique, they're distinct, and improving student achievement, which is what all of us want for Georgia. And I'm convinced that this process and this relationship, renewed relationship, will lead to Georgia students leading the nation in academic achievement. Make no mistake, the task force will continue their work. Frankly, this was by agreement that the funding formula will follow. We also have an outdated funding formula, almost 30 years old. Probably by the time we pass it next year, it will be virtually 30 years old, Brooks. And that this funding formula will, again, represent this new relationship of flexibility with accountability and performance-based rather than compliance-based. And I look forward to the task force recommendation early enough where everyone can have a real look at it in the 2009 session. Prior to the 2009 session, we can again have an inclusive, collaborative process with the stakeholders. Once again, there's no ever lack of stakeholders in the education businesses or Brooks. They'll come out. So, as we all know, and has been mentioned today, another very serious issue and challenge facing Georgians is transportation. Today I'm going to sign a third bill that's been in the works for several years as well, Senator Mullis. It's the State Transportation Infrastructure Bank. Will support transportation project funding on a local level. Let me stress, it is not a final solution to the transportation. I don't know if we'll ever get to that word, final solution on transportation. In a growing state, you'll have continued challenges and you'll have to have continuing solutions and new solutions going on. But it is another tool in the toolbox. And we all know that this will help our local governments when their projects don't make that priority list, that they will still be able to get resources from the infrastructure bank for local governments to complete qualified projects like roads, bridges, and transit. Since 2003, I want to note on transportation, since 2003, this administration, with the help of the legislature, has more than doubled spending on transportation in Georgia. More than double, $2.6 billion of letting last year. And I want to tell you right up front, I think we still need more resources in transportation. And we're going to look for the right way to do that. Does that necessarily mean taxes? Is that the best user fee way for funding transportation? I'm not convinced it is. We're going to look for a variety of options to do that. But the more information I frankly hear from Commissioner Abrams, the more convinced I am right now that money may have exacerbated the problem right now. We are working on transportation. We're working fundamentally on the core delivery system that we've got to depend on in this state to get transportation projects out there. After I saw that we had doubled from $1 to over $2 billion in transportation, I started asking, well, what are we getting for Fast Forward? And I saw that over 4% was really invested in new lane miles. I knew something was wrong. And we can't have that. We've got to have a delivery system, a financing structure, a construction system, and an operation and maintenance system that will last this state and make sure the citizens get their value. You know, every time I meet with Commissioner Abrams and I hear more about the DOT and what's being found, I'm not sure whether we're at the bottom of the barrel or not, but every time she comes over, there's a smell that is not very pleasant about what's happening, what's being found there regarding the financial structure of what's happened there. You're going to hear more this afternoon, I think, about that, and I'll leave the details up to her. So that had convinced me. I'd already known enough that I didn't believe we were in the position to say to the people of Georgia, we can use more of your money wisely right now. And that's why I told you why I believe that, and I think you'll hear more of those management challenges at DOT this afternoon. And that's why I signed a letter this morning authorizing the Department of Audits, upon Russell's request, to bring in external assistance for DOT to perform a forensic audit to begin in May. Russell Hinton has had, our state auditor, has had 4 auditors over there. This is a very complex accounting and financial system there, and they're frankly having difficulty getting their hands around it, and we're going to approach it from a forensic standpoint with professionals in this field that know what to look for and know how to find it. Let me tell you, let me just admit to you, I know the people of Georgia, particularly in the metro area, are impatient about transportation. I'm impatient too. And that's why when I came into office, I heard more money is the answer. And when you double more money within 4 years and you get the value that we've gotten, it's not right for me to ask the people of Georgia to give more money again right today. But we will need more resources, and we will find those. I appreciate the passion that our legislative leaders have showed. Vance and Jeff have pursued this, and they've showed in trying to pursue additional funding for transportation. But folks, I just believe that was putting the cart before the horse. I told a banker who's on the DOT board in my office, I said, if I came in to renew my $2.2 billion line of credit, and as my banker, you asked me for a financial statement, and I started stuttering and tell you I couldn't produce you a financial statement on a $2.9 billion operation, would you renew my line of credit? And he kind of looked blankly at me like, you know the answer to that. And that's exactly what we were doing to the people of Georgia. And we could not even produce a financial statement today, and you'll hear more of those details. Folks, this is going to take another inclusive, collaborative process, bringing together all the stakeholders, these legislators that have spent time studying, the DOT board that spent time studying, our C&G task force that spent time studying, and all the information that we've gathered in this process to come together. The State Roadway and Toll Authority, under the direction of Commissioner Abrams, and Greta, led by former Bell South executive Dick Anderson, and the Get Georgia Moving Coalition, those business leaders and other organizations, and the metropolitan planning organizations. All these, we want to come together. We've got enough studies now. We want to come together and get a plan that will literally move our state forward. And we'll solicit the stakeholder input in the same way that we did the water council and IE Squared. And the good news is I'm committing to you it won't take as long. I'm putting a timeline of probably the end of September on this, again, so the legislature can see the work product, have an opportunity to impact it and ask the appropriate questions that they should and will want to ask. And we want to do that more quickly. We've got the information. It's now about bringing it together, putting into action, and hopefully by, I say the fall, but I'm hoping sometimes in September, so that the legislators can have a chance to look at what we'll be asking them to do in 2009. Folks, I think if we had acted on this issue, we would have acted prematurely. I believe that. I think that, frankly, I'm not sure, again, a sales tax, particularly when you look at the per capita of sales tax allocation across the state, what it would mean to the funding, you would not get a cohesive system on a regional basis, another layer of allocation government. I told some people that if you ever dealt with counties and cities trying to split up SPLOST money, I can't imagine trying to do it on a regional basis with transportation projects. I really mean that. And I think frankly, we've saved ourselves. And that's why Commissioner Abrams and Chairman Mike Evans and the DOT board and the rest of the board are doing the hard work and making the tough policy decisions. Gina's leading that board into making tough policy decisions that need to be made so we can assure that taxpayers, they're getting an efficient transportation that we know they want and deserve. So I'm proud to sign all these bills today, and I'm happy to point out that despite a few of the highly publicized issues, I think the citizens of Georgia saw much progress during the 2008 session on issues that matter to them. I want to thank again the Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor and for standing here with me today, and we'll look forward to answering your questions, and then we'll have some bill signing.
Speaker, in the final hours of the session, you called for Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle ouster. You said, I think Georgia should be looking for a new Lieutenant Governor. Do you stand by those statements today?
Well, anybody who's ever played sports understands that when the game is going on, the tensions run high. And I'll stand by the fact that the legislative process is a very difficult and trying time, and we all say things in the middle of a game that we probably wouldn't have said if we had been on the sideline not playing the game. So I'll just leave it at that. Tensions were high. I was trying to make something happen. It didn't work, and I'll stand by the fact that we have a disagreement, both of us doing what we should do, and that's how this process is designed to work. We're supposed to talk. I'm supposed to assert the House position as hard as I can. The Lieutenant Governor is charged with the responsibility of asserting his position, the Senate's position, and the process works. It really does work. The Governor just gave a great example. And when you reflect on those, if you look at CON, IE squared, and State Infrastructure Bank, those ideas have been around at least for 3 or 4 years. It's taken us to get those from doing something to finalizing it. Some of the ideas that we had out this year in their first year. And so it just takes time, and change is difficult. It should be that way. And the game's over, and we are now going to go for their jobs to lead the state. And I'm going to, every chance I get, try to talk them into my position, and I'm sure they'll have their positions, and we will try to do what's best for the people of the state.
So to the Lieutenant Governor, who in recent days has called the Speaker a bully, how do you convince voters that there's a spirit of cooperation among you all, three Republicans?
Look at it.
Only a moment of love. But, well, what I can say is that, obviously the governor, myself, along with the speaker, are not going to agree on everything. But there's a right way to go about it and a wrong way to go about it. The styles are very different, and what you're going to continue to see from me is what you've seen, and that is steady, principled leadership that's going to be focused on doing what's in the best interest of Georgia citizens.
Well, Governor, how do you characterize the relationship among the three of you and its implications for solving problems?
Well, I think, again, communication, trust, and obviously consensus has to be part of that. And frankly, I don't believe name calling in any fashion, whether on the field or in the legislature, has a place in that. It has a certain disrespectful tone, and I think it's best done even in the heat of the moment. Carry yourself with dignity while you put forth that argument, and hopefully we'll be able to go forward on that. And that's exactly what I've tried to do over this last year, is to go forward in a way of consensus building, working on those issues that matter to Georgians, and trying to do, and again, a facts-based, principle-centered, customer-driven set of principles on driving decisions that I think serve Georgia well. I think most people do if you follow those principles, and hopefully we can do that. Even when we disagree passionately over issues, we can still respect one another and do so in a way that maintains the dignity of the offices that we hold and the bodies that we serve, and most importantly, the people we serve.
On that subject, to either the Speaker or the Lieutenant Governor or both, a lot of folks would say, okay, this is, somebody watching might say, look, this is great for you guys folks to work together now. Why was it so hard, and why were some issues at least left unresolved when it counted?
Well, I mean, this process is designed that way. I mean, anybody that thinks you're supposed to be able just to introduce something and get past doesn't understand the process. It is supposed to. I mean, the governor has things that he wanted that didn't happen. The lieutenant governor has things he wants that didn't happen. The speaker has things. House members. The whole process is designed to be difficult. It is supposed to be difficult to make laws that affect people's lives, whatever they are, whether it means you pay more taxes or less taxes, or whether we put you in jail or not, or whether we do something in your habit. And that's what working together means. But in the end, the House passes what we think needs to be passed, and then the Senate gets to make that decision as to whether they call it up and act on it. And as the other issues, as the governor said, stakeholders have weighed in on that for the last few years. I don't think any issue got any more attention in the healthcare end than CON. And we held that and we held that and held up till we got the solution. And speaking of writing and rewriting policy, we were rewriting that bill up to a few days before it was in fact, we re-voted the morning that it was voted upon. So writing and rewriting policy changes is okay. That's how we make laws. That's how you make compromise. But I pledge that I'm going to try to come back, and I'm going to ask the stakeholders, the owners of property in the state of Georgia, to start weighing in if they want relief from property taxes. And that's what will happen in this process.
I was going to ask you along that same lines. I mean, you're the only one of these three that has to run for re-election this year. and so you're on a campaign trail. Are you going to continue kind of what you did last year, where you were talking about this property tax issue, and how do you characterize what has happened and what is going to happen?
Well, I am running, and all House and Senate members are running. We run every 2 years. And am I going to talk about property taxes? Yes, until the day I die. I'm going to pledge to keep on keeping on to try to give relief to property taxes. I think it's the worst tax that there is. And I think we ought to look to change that. We've been doing it for 160 years, and maybe changing it in a year is a little too much to ask for. Am I going to ask people to support it? Absolutely. I think you saw people coming and the momentum building, and maybe over the next year or 2 or 3, or whatever it takes, as long as I'm alive, whether I'm in office or not, I'm going to try to change a system that I think is fundamentally flawed, and that is the system of taxing the static ownership of property.
Will you be calling it
I'm
the
gonna
Casey
comment
Cagle
about
birthday
that,
tax
please.
out in the campaign tonight?
I think, again, when you talk about property taxes, I think everybody hates property taxes, and I'd love to see them lowered all around. Property taxes are local taxes, but they're what local governments depend on. They're dependable. They're stable. I think I've got the facts. I've showed them to you all as one of our legislative leaders, and I think the Speaker, Lieutenant Governor agree that local government spending and revenue has grown far out surpassed the state's revenue over the last 10 years. Now, if we want to cut property taxes, let's cut property taxes, but let's don't ask the state taxpayers to backfill those property tax cuts the way we've done in homeowner tax relief grants, which is nothing more than a circumvention where the state taxpayer is supporting that and is given no restraints on local property tax growth. I'm willing to have a great engagement with this discussion, but what we devolved into at the end of the last day it came out of the Rules Committee was putting together an idea from Senator Mark Burkhalter that he's advocated for a few years, and the idea that I had over the $250 million, $93 million tax cut, and patching those together in order to get something together we could call pass and call a tax cut, and then backfill that with the state revenue, which I don't think the state is prepared to do that. Let me remind everyone that the state revenue estimate is merely an upper cap. If the legislature on either side or both together sees fit, they are in no way obligated to spend up to that limit. And if I can see some exercise and fiscal discipline from the legislature where they want to spend under that limit, I'll be right there helping them determine and putting my opinion about what tax cut I'd like to see them cut. And until that day when we want to make those tough decisions about what we're going to cut, then and talk about tax relief, property tax relief that the state taxpayer backfills, then I think we're talking about two different things.
Governor, are you surprised by the scope of the problems that have been reported to you by DOT?
Yes, I am. Frankly, if I had any idea, I would have moved much quicker in that regard. I'm disappointed. I'm disheartened. I think the DOT board has a right to be disheartened about what they're hearing. Some very significant things dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars have not been reported to the DOT board in the fashion that they should. I'm very concerned that it has put our state in an obligation fashion regarding advanced funding from the federal highway that jeopardizes that. And again, I think you should get more of those details from the person who has uncovered that this afternoon, and they'll be forthcoming. I'll be happy to talk about those more specifically after that information this afternoon. Commissioner Abrams is trying to do her best to keep legislative leaders informed, as well as DOT board members and other policy stakeholders in that regard. But to answer the question is absolutely, I'm very disappointed.
But if there's hundreds of millions of dollars at stake here, You supported the DOT, keeping the same people on DOT board when that election came up. I don't know, if maybe wrong, but I don't know if there's been anyone who's been criminally charged or fired or anything at DOT. And shouldn't there be some kind of reaction or something that happens beyond just continually trying to find or continually finding things that are wrong? I mean, shouldn't somebody be, I don't know, held accountable for it?
I absolutely believe people should be held accountable for it. As I indicated to you, I think many of the things they're finding the DOT board members who were on that board were not aware of. I think they should have been aware of, and hopefully they will hold those people responsible that did not make them aware of that.
Governor,
regarding
you may
the
not
chief
have
boss-
had a chance to see the gun bill yet, or do you have any concerns about what you've heard about how it passed, or anything that you particularly think might lead you to sign it?
I do have some concerns. I have not gone back line by line. We'll do that and make a determination. Again, I don't know the details of the essence of it. I certainly am hearing from the hospitality and restaurant industry regarding their concerns over the fact of the part regarding carrying guns in restaurants and public places. So I'm generally supportive, as you know, of gun owner rights, and I'll give a great look at it, and I hope it's something that I can sign, but if it's not, then I'll regretfully veto it, and I don't know the answer to that yet.
Governor, regarding the T-SPLOS, one of the issues that you had brought up was the equity. There's also an equity issue in tolling, or do you see an equity issue in tolling where the lowliest secretary has to pay just as much for her commute as the highest CEO? So do you have a plan instead of the T-SPLOS that will provide transportation options for people who can't afford daily tolls? And is the state in any shape to deliver a program like that, given disarray?
Let me answer the first question regarding equity and parity, particularly when it comes to sales tax on food and others. I do believe that is regressive. We were asking the people of Georgia, and although the language did not say anything about taxes, we were asking the people of Georgia to authorize a 1% increase in sales tax. On that same person who makes $10,000 a year, buys $100 worth of groceries, they're going to be paying the same thing on $100 of groceries as that person who makes $100,000 a year and buys $100 of groceries. So if you want to talk about parity, and you're using sales tax as an example of parity, I would disagree with you. I think, again, from a use perspective, I think tolling is probably the best method of utilization taxes for those that use that portion of New Edition. I have no plans to ask the people of Georgia to toll roads that they have already paid for. I'm talking about additional capacity. I think it's appropriate from a financial standpoint, a concession standpoint. It makes a lot of sense to do that. Where it doesn't make sense everywhere. Not every road carries its own weight. That's why we have a state government with a state transportation plan. And I would submit to you this can be better done in a statewide transportation plan rather than a regional component where we are trying to sort out whose projects get done with no continuity among regions. So I'm prepared. The latter part of your question was,
is DOT or is the state in any condition to deliver a toll plan, considering the disarray?
Yes, I think we will be. The challenge that Gina has, frankly, is to rebuild the airplane while she's in the air.
Well, what's the difference? Why are we in a position to do tolls but not in a position to do non-toll projects?
I think we'll be in a position to do both.
Thank you, Vice Governor.
All right,
Thank you. Thank you.